Aww, adorable.
She wanted to come up. It's always when it's like when you weren't recording, she was down there and she heard the words recording in progress. So now it's time to come up, right?
Aw, mine will be here soon.
Yeah, Yogi will be here too. He is always a part of our meetings. Yeah. All right. So hello, everybody. My name is Ambari, and I am super excited today because I will be moderating an event that we have been really looking forward to since a while. When I say we, I mean the Extract Plant-Rich Diet Task Force. And today's event is actually the second speaker series event of the Plant-Rich Diet Challenge that began on October 1st. So it's called the Weight Loss Strategies with Chef AJ, who is a weight loss expert. Thank you so much once again for your time, Chef.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And I hope you don't mind. I have a little guest with me.
We love him. Her. So weight loss is something that is being talked about since probably the past 40 to 50 years or maybe less. It is relatively a new topic in addition to, let's say, other hot topics like religion, politics, and which are perennially hot topics. But it really amuses me sometimes that even as we call ourselves the most evolved and the most intelligent species on the planet, but it is only us who are still not sure about what to eat and what not to eat. We still go to dietitians, we still have to go to nutritionists, we have to research to find out what is good for us. Every other species of living being already know what they're supposed to eat and what they're not supposed to eat. So it was way back in the month of July when I reached out to Chef AJ for this interview for the first time. And I'm thrilled that it is finally happening today. Thank you once again, Chef.
My pleasure.
For the uninitiated, Chef AJ has been devoted to a plant-exclusive diet for over 44 years. She was the host of the television series Healthy Living with Chef AJ, which aired on Foody TV. A chef, culinary instructor, and professional speaker, she is author of the popular book Unprocessed: How to Achieve Vibrant Health and Your Ideal Weight, which chronicles her journey from an obese, junk food vegan faced with a diagnosis of pre-cancerous polyps to learning how to create foods that nourish and heal the body. Her latest best-selling books, The Secrets to Ultimate Weight Loss, a revolutionary approach to conquer cravings, overcome food addiction, and lose weight without going hungry, and another one called Own Your Health, have received glowing endorsements by many luminaries in the plant-based movement. Chef AJ was the executive pastry chef at Sante restaurant in Los Angeles, where she was famous for her sugar, oil, salt, and gluten-free desserts, which use the whole fruit, and nothing but the whole fruit. She broadcasts Chef AJ live on YouTube and Facebook daily. She's the creator of the Ultimate Weight Loss Program, which has helped hundreds of people achieve the health and the body that they deserve, and is proud to say that her IQ is higher than her cholesterol. In 2018, she was inducted into the Vegetarian Hall of Fame. With that, please welcome Chef AJ all the way from California today.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you. How are you, Chef, today?
I'm doing great, thank you. You know, it's interesting what you said about how come we've only had this problem for 40 or 50 years. It's because what we eat has changed. That's the answer. Whenever there's a question, look to nature for the answer. And processed food is not found in nature. And I can't speak for the country you're in, but Americans eat over 90% of their calories from animal products and processed foods and less than 10% from fruits and vegetables. So we're not designed to eat processed food. It's not food. And that's the problem, because that's when it started, right around World War II. The country, that was in the 1940s, the country became more affluent. Women were going back to work. mom was busy with the PTA, and that's when we started seeing processed food. It's an industry, and the more processed food you eat, the more obesity and sickness you're going to have. And that's really the problem, is the food change. We're not eating the diet that's consistent with our species' natural history. You know, if you look to nature, there's millions of different species of animals. And in the history of the world, only 3 have ever been overweight: human beings, domesticated dogs, and domesticated cats, because those are the only 3 species that aren't eating food consistent with their own species' natural history.
Wow. Yeah. I never actually thought about that because yeah, a lot of our domesticated pets are also overweight. Yeah, that's actually
When
true.
you see an overweight dog, look up the leash. 99% of the time, that owner's going to be overweight
That's the
too.
one.
It's pretty rare to not see that. Yeah. Well, so yeah, pets too are not eat. Most pets are fed processed food. It's pet
Yeah.
food that we buy at the store. We're not supposed to eat food that comes in a can, a box, a bottle, or a bag. Whether you think we need to or should eat animal products or not, that's a whole nother discussion. But nobody is supposed to eat processed food. We are not designed to eat it. It's calorically dense. It's nutritionally poor. It lacks fiber, water, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, and micronutrients. And it's not food. It's socially acceptable, readily available, easily affordable, but it is not food. And we shouldn't even be calling it processed food because it's not food. And that's what most people eat from the morning when they get up and they have a Pop-Tart or cereal in a box or Lego My Eggo to, you know, a lean cuisine frozen entree at work, or, you know, some kind of restaurant food that's high in sugar, fat, and salt. We're not eating food, at least not in the United States. Most Americans eat no vegetables, none.
Actually, it's the same here as well. Pretty much the same here. It's probably it's a little bit a little more in the United States and some other countries, Western countries. But we are catching up. We like to emulate the Western world.
That's right.
For everything.
That's right.
So,
every country that emulates the United States becomes fat and sick, like the people in the United States. That's what could happen in Mexico. I mean, it's incredible. If people would eat the food of their ancestors in their country, like Mexico, rice and beans, they would be healthy and not diabetic and not obese. But they come to America for opportunity, and the opportunities they get are diabetes and cancer and heart disease.
Okay, yeah, that's I think this is happening everywhere around the world. Probably a few sporadic countries or communities here and there, but I think it's just something that's obesity and diabetes and cardiac issues are prevalent everywhere around the world. My first question to you is about your personal journey. I'm very curious because what was it that 44 years ago, when plant-based eating might be unheard of, you decided to change your diet? What made you, I mean, what motivated you? Because even today, when there is internet, when there are books, when there are speakers, even today, it is very difficult to motivate a person to eat the right food, even today. So what was it 44 years ago that made you? Yeah.
So I was 17 years old. I was a freshman at the University of Pennsylvania. I wanted to be a veterinarian, and instead I became a vegetarian because the very first day on the job, and when I say on the job, when you're on scholarship, you're assigned to work for a veterinarian. The veterinarian handed me a tank of live salamanders and told me I needed to cut all their heads off. And I did not want to do that. You know, I'm a very squeamish person. I could never even go fishing or all that. You know, when I get my blood taken, I'm like looking the other way. So it's like, I didn't want to do it, but I was worried I would lose my scholarship if I didn't obey the man in the white coat. So I cut the head off one salamander. And in that moment, I puked my guts out. I went to the student health organization. I was so ashamed and upset about what I did. And I said to God, I'm never going to eat another one of your animals again. And I became an instant vegan. But the problem was I wasn't a healthy vegan because all I did was take out animal products, which was great. You know, I had wonderful cholesterol and things like that. But all I ate was garbage. All I ate was junk food. You know, French fries are vegan, potato chips are vegan, soda's vegan. So I became a junk food vegetarian. And it caught up with me. For 26 years, I was obese. I was almost 200 pounds. And then one day I woke up with what they called the beginning of colon cancer. It was great that I wasn't eating animal products. I probably would have had full-blown cancer, but I wasn't having any nutrition. I wasn't eating fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes and the things that I eat today. I wasn't even drinking any water. My liquids were I had 2 liquids every day for breakfast and lunch: Coke Slurpees with 8 pumps of vanilla syrup and Dr. Pepper big gulps. I was a food addict, specifically a sugar addict. So I became vegan for ethical reasons, not even knowing until really, 2003, when I had my health crisis, that it also, in addition to being extremely kind and compassionate for the animals, it was also like the best thing for your health if you're eating whole plants, not processed plants. So I know that whether you eat animal products or not, processed food is not healthy and in any amount. And unfortunately, that's what people love and that's what people eat because it's addictive.
Right. Yeah. I was reading somewhere that, sugar is like weed. The addictive property of sugar is just sugar and cheese. They're just so strong.
Oh my God. Well,
Yeah.
cheese has casomorphins in it. So
Yeah.
Dr. Neil Barnard has written 2 books on this, one called The Cheese Trap and one called The
Trap.
Body
Yeah.
Balance, because casein is the protein that is in dairy. And when it's ingested, it turns to like an opiate-like compound in the brain called casomorphine, because we're not meant to drink milk of another species. We're not even meant to drink milk after maturity. And so God, or whoever you believe, put milk in mother's breasts, put this mildly addictive compound in it so that the baby would nurse and not stray, because we didn't always have homes and protection, never having the idea that we were going to take the milk from another species. Cow's milk is for a baby calf to grow to 800 pounds in a year. It's not for human beings to ingest. And that's why all the smart cultures in the world never ever ingested dairy in the first place. And so you take this bovine growth fluid and then you concentrate it into cheese, yogurt, and ice cream. And now you've concentrated these casomorphins. Cheese is addictive. I've heard people say it was harder to give up cheese than it was even to quit smoking, because it creates this opiate-like effect in the brain. And the same thing with sugar. I mean, for some, look, it's sort of like this. There are people that can drink alcohol in varying amounts and not become an alcoholic. Those people exist. Yeah. But if you're an alcoholic, it's not you, and the best amount of alcohol is none. And it's the same thing with sugar. The people like my husband, he can have a rich dessert. He could probably have one every day if he didn't care about his health, and he's not compelled to eat more. But for a lot of people, sugar and even flour, believe it or not, are as addictive as cocaine and heroin, because sugar and flour go through the same refining process as drugs and alcohol. And for those of us that are sensitive or vulnerable to the effects of refined food addiction, it just creates this dopamine surge in our brain, much more powerful than if we were going to eat like an apple or a banana. And, like the saying goes in our commercials here, once you pop, you just can't stop. And so, yeah, I'm really passionate about people just not eating processed food, but it's a tough sell, because it's a whole industry, and, most people don't want to give it up.
Yeah, and then there are very less corporates who are selling apples, right? Who will be
right. And apples aren't subsidized. You ever see a commercial on television for broccoli? Really? No, the government subsidizes crops like wheat and corn and soy and sugar. And it's crazy. And then plus, if we didn't eat animals, we could feed the world with what we're feeding animals. I mean, it's all about profit at the end of the day. It really is. Processed food industry is like the tobacco industry. Actually, as a matter of fact, when people finally understood that smoking caused cancer, and they were told by the Surgeon General and the warning labels not to smoke, what did the tobacco companies do? They bought all the processed food industries, because that's their model. That's their addictive model. You don't want to get people so sick they die, but you want to keep them customers for life. And, if you read books like Michael Moss's Salt, Sugar, and Fat, How the Food Giants Hooked Us, or his latest book, Hooked, or The End of Overeating by Dr. David Kessler, hopefully you'll get as mad as I did when I read these books and just stop buying processed food and stop supporting an industry that is basically causing death and illness in either you or all your loved ones.
Sure. So I just want to ask that, let's say somebody who is, eating a standard American diet, which is like, very, very high in processed foods and animal products. What do you think should be the first step this person should take when they embark on a journey to great health?
Right.
Is it that because if we for a person who doesn't want to do it overnight, probably most people are like that. What is the first thing that they should eliminate or reduce? Is it animal products or is it processed food? Although
So
there is an overlap between the two.
It's a great question. It's going to depend, first of all, on the personality of the individual, because if you're talking a 22-year-old who's not overweight, it's going to be my answer is going to be different than a 60-year-old who's about to go on dialysis. So for example, but what I usually do with people is, instead of taking anything away, because people don't like it when you tell them people don't like the concept of abstinence, even though it's like amazingly it works for every addiction. You tell them to add more. So you don't change their diet at all. You just say, can you start adding a salad at lunch or dinner? Can you start having a piece of fruit with your breakfast or dessert? So you get them to add more fruits and vegetables. A great way to do it is with a green smoothie for breakfast. You can even hide the taste of the greens with cocoa powder and dates, but you get more healthy food into them. That's what I recommend people do first, because people don't like it when you take things away from them.
We have a question here. What about processed plant-based foods? She's referring to Impossible and Beyond Burgers. So the alternatives.
I'm not very popular among the vegans, just so you know. I'm surprised they put me in the Hall of Fame, because it's much better for the environment than the methane producing cows. And it's much better for the animals, of course, but it's not health food. It's still high in sugar, fat, and salt. It's got a lot of oil. It's got a lot of fake stuff in it. If it's going to get people off meat, like methadone, then maybe go for it. But it's really not healthy. If food is supposed to be eaten from a plant in its whole food form, not manufactured in a plant. And so basically what happens is people are stuck in what's known as the pleasure trap. They're addicted to sugar, fat, and salt. And so vegan processed food is just a more humane addiction.
Please, anybody who has questions, you can either unmute yourself and just ask, or you can write it in the chat box. Andrea asks a question: how do you guide people who are able to eliminate meat and processed foods but cannot kick the cheese habit? Oh, I meet so many of them.
That's interesting, because if I'm really working with somebody that's going to listen to me, cheese is what I would give up first. Dairy is the thing I would give up even before processed food and before meat, for many reasons, because in many ways, it's the most deleterious. All the reproductive cancers are linked to dairy, like prostate cancer and ovarian and uterine cancer. So dairy is a hormonal secretion of another animal. It's not supposed to be eaten by you. It's also, if somebody is interested in being vegan for ethical reasons, it's probably the cruelest of all it's all cruel, by the way. There's no animal that has a nice day in a factory farm, but dairy is especially cruel. And especially if you're female, and especially if you've had a baby, that like when a baby nurses, it gets a little sore, it gets a little tender. You might get a little mastitis, right? Well, that's the cow's in that state all the time. Her udders are always bleeding, cracked, oozing blood, oozing pus. Well, that's going in your milk. At least in the United States, they allow a lot of parts per million of blood and pus and urine and feces in the milk, because this cow is attached to these machines all day. She's not impregnated in a normal way. She's put on what's called a rape rack, where she's actually raped to get pregnant. Her little calf is taken away. If it's a girl, she's going to have a fate like the mother and be a dairy cow. If it's a boy, he gets a chain around his neck and lives in anemic darkness for 9 months, never getting to see his mother, while his mother is crying for him the whole 9 days that he's alive. It is literally, watch a video, the cruelest thing you've ever seen. And then one of the things you have to understand, it's not like back in the day, like 60 years ago, when Farmer John had a cow named Bessie who could walk around and be milked occasionally. That milk, by the way, you're stealing her baby's milk. How would you like that if some other species did that to you? But the thing is in order for that cow not to get sick and die, they are given mass doses of hormones and antibiotics to not get sick. So if you're ingesting dairy products, you're taking pharmaceuticals. And you wonder why, when we have these epidemics, why people are so resistant to antibiotics. Because if you've been having dairy since birth, I'm very lucky that I'm allergic to milk, you've been consuming mass doses of antibiotics. And because they want the cow because of monetary reasons, they want the cow to be able to produce 40 times as much milk as they would normally. They're also given mass doses of hormones. So you're taking hormonal secretion and additional hormones. You wonder why little girls are getting their periods at 6 now. You're supposed to get your period at like 17. You're not supposed to get your period at 6 and get pregnant at 8. You're not supposed to have physical maturity before emotional maturity. So the first thing I say to everyone is stop dairy. That is the worst, most destructive thing to your health. Babies that aren't getting dairy, they don't get ear infections, they don't get sick. Dairy is the absolute worst food a human can consume unless it's from their own mother. And if you need more information on this, there's a wonderful book by Dr. T. Colin Campbell called The China Study that explains this, how he was able to turn cancer on and off just by using this protein found in dairy, casomorphine. So that's the first thing. I think that is the most important change that I would tell people to make, even if they wanted to continue eating meat, is stop the dairy. It's ridiculous. You don't need cow's milk any more than you need goat milk or monkey milk or zebra milk. You're only supposed to drink milk from somebody who is your mother. We're not supposed to drink milk after or have it after maturity. And the fact that you can't give it up shows me how addictive it is. Because if I told you the secret to optimal health and longevity, and if you're overweight, weight loss was not to eat okra, I'm pretty sure nobody would argue with me about okra.
Yeah, it's amazing actually. So I'm Indian, and I grew up in India for a good part of my childhood. And India has the largest number of vegetarians in the world. I don't know how much, although that's also changing, but the largest number of, but India also happens to be the diabetic capital of the world, which gives you something, right? Like the country where dairy consumption is the highest also is diabetic, diabetic dominant country. So I cannot even begin to tell you how similar what you said just now is exactly what I think as well. I have the reason why my husband became a vegan was because he didn't want our daughter, who was 3 years old at that time, when we took this step from being a vegetarian to, we were eating everything at one point, and then for ethical reasons we stopped meat and fish, and then but we continued our dairy and egg journey. But then the reason why my husband stopped dairy was because he didn't want Ahana to drink milk, because he had read about premature puberty striking in girls and boys, and he was like, if I continue doing this, I cannot ask her not to. So we just stopped it then and there because of her, because we didn't want her to be physically mature when her emotional maturity hadn't reached that point. Right. So the next question that I have is that addiction that you're talking about. I have a notorious sweet tooth, and I'm sure a lot of people have this sugar craving. Mm-hmm. What do you think is the reason for any kind of addiction, whether it is fried food, whether it is sugar, whether it is where do you think it takes birth? This addiction.
What it is people. A lot of people are more genetically disposed to developing addictions. But the thing is there's this concept, and it's a wonderful book by Dr. Lyle and Goldhammer called The Pleasure Trap. Is that when you're presented with what he calls supernormal stimuli, there's a chance that you're going to get hooked. So for example, there's a difference between apple and apple pie, or carrot and carrot cake. People don't ever get addicted to whole natural foods. At a certain point, you stop eating apples. And so what happens is we're genetically hardwired to prefer the taste of sugar, fat, and salt for survival, but in the way they came in nature: an apple, an avocado, greens for the salt. There is no food product, there's no food in nature that combines sugar with fat, sugar with salt, fat with salt, or sugar, fat, and salt. And that's what processed food and restaurant food is. It's this supernormal stimuli where sugar, fat, and salt are combined in high concentrations, and those who are vulnerable or susceptible do. It's not addiction necessarily the same way as like cocaine is, but it is like that. It's like an addictive like process. And it is normal to prefer sweets because we have the taste buds on the tip of our tongue for sweet and salt, but we're supposed to satisfy our sweet tooth with the fruit, the whole fruit, and nothing but the whole fruit. And so it is completely normal to like sweet, but you don't have to get it from processed sugar. You can get it from fruit, or even, dried fruit at the beginning, because sometimes even, fruit's not, people that are sugar addicts like me, it's like, fruit, you got to be kidding. Now fruit is almost too sweet for me. So I had to use dates, which is a very sweet dried fruit, almost like methadone, just to get off sugar. Because I mean, I was medicating with sugar and caffeine all day, at Slurpees and Dr. Pepper. And so, like me eat a strawberry. And now when I eat fruit, I'm like, God, it's too sweet.
Yeah, we have a question here from Philip Cumming. He says, this is fascinating. Thank you. So are dried beans better than canned beans?
Oh, I don't think it, okay. So stuff like that, like when I say processed, if the label on the can, box, or bottle is one ingredient, or one ingredient plus water, it's fine. Canned beans, especially, you can get salt-free now in BPA-free cans. I think they're perfectly fine. It's cheaper, of course, to cook your own, and like you can do it in an Instant Pot, but we buy canned beans all the time for convenience. And I think that's absolutely fine.
Okay. So,
I have a question for Chef AJ.
Yeah.
Okay, Chef AJ, how do you respond to someone, especially, I guess just about anybody, but especially, kind of our generation and older, who have been conditioned to believe that you have to eat these foods for your health, who would like, and maybe they do transition largely to eating more plants, but they just have this feeling that I'm supposed to have meat, or I'm supposed to have milk.
Here's the thing. I'm not a doctor, so I can't, first of all, I don't think you can convince anyone of anything. There's an old saying, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still, but you can provide them with information. I mean, there's so many wonderful documentaries out there now, like Forks Over Knives and Game Changers. But I think if they're the kind of person that doesn't believe anything unless it's a doctor that says it, what's one of the most wonderful things about the pandemic is that all the plant-based doctors pretty much have taken their business online. So even though they're seeing patients in person now, it is possible wherever you live in the world to have a consultation with a plant-based and lifestyle medicine doctor. And if sometimes that's what a person needs, because a conventional medical doctor went to medical school where nutrition wasn't even taught, or maybe they had 2 hours of it. So, I mean, there's people always look for the evidence they want to support the case they want. That's why I don't even necessarily like to argue with people about whether you can or should or supposed to eat meat, because we're going to argue for a long time. But there's nobody that I know that says we're supposed to eat processed food. We're just not designed for it. And it's funny because there was a study done, it was on the Huffington Post, and this grad student did this thing where they swallowed a camera. It's called From Mouth to Anus, if you want to Google it. And it was to prove that when the body is presented with processed food, it didn't know what to do with it. They made a meal of what they served the person was, I think it was like a typical college student kind of diet, like top ramen noodles and Gatorade. And then they made healthy versions of it from real food. And when the real food was eaten, the digestion occurred as normal. But when the body was presented with this processed food and this green dye and this whole, it was like the body was like, I don't know what to do. It was like digestion stopped. So we're not designed to eat processed food. Our ancestors did eat meat, but they didn't eat that much of it because, there was no refrigeration. There was no advanced hunting tools. There was no factory farming. They generally ate the sick, the slow, the weak, the isolated, the injured. The animal products that they ate were much lower in fat. So it was a whole different ballgame. I'm not saying that people aren't able to eat meat, but we're certainly not carnivores. We're herbivores. I mean, look at these teeth. I mean, if you tried to bite into the neck of an animal, nothing would happen. What our diet is supposed to be based on our teeth and our digestive tract. We're basically herbivores. I know we can be omnivores, but just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. But I think there's many books on the subject. Proteinaholic by Dr. Garth Davis. People don't need to have meat. There's nothing you can't get from a plant exclusive diet, with the exception of B12, that you can't get in a better and more utilizable form than you can an animal-based diet. So, and plus, we have a planet to think about now, and we're not going to have a planet if people don't stop eating meat, or to the degree they're eating it, we're not going to have any place to live, guys, because global warming is real. There's a wonderful book. I contributed recipes to it, and it's a must read, but we are destroying the environment in an unprecedented rate. And that is because of people's taste for meat. What do you think about that? You like that? Oh.
What does she eat?
She eats V-Dog. It's a vegetarian kibble, and I'm going to be honest, we adopted her late in life so we give her the smallest amount of animal protein that we can to get her to eat her vegan dog food. When we don't give her that, she doesn't eat for days. And we're you embarrass me because you're not fully vegan, but we keep trying introducing vegan dog food all the time. She is stubborn. If I ever got a puppy though, man, they'd be vegan from birth, but the kibbles are vegan and the chewies are vegan. So it's just the tiniest bit to wet it on top so that she'll eat.
So we have another question. How can we access your recipes? Mamata asks.
Sure. Well, if you go to my YouTube channel, which is my name, there's lots of recipe videos there. Of course, I have like 4 books, but so many recipes just for free on YouTube. That's where I would go.
Great. We have another question from Scott. He says, Chef AJ, I think you just spoke about taste and taste bud retraining. You said that fruit for you is now too sweet. Do you think this is a topic of discussion when suggesting transformed diets?
Wait, I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
So let me chime in here, Chef AJ. So the question I have is taste bud retraining.
Yeah, it's kind of like adaptation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a thing. So when you eat a very stimulating diet, high in sugar, fat, and salt, and then go to a kind of diet I recommend, there's going to be a period of discomfort and not liking the food. But after a while, you will like it. And one of the ways to make that process go faster is through what's called medically supervised therapeutic water only fasting, which they do at the True North Health Center and other places, where you actually withhold food from people, specifically the sugar, fat, and salt. And then when you refeed them, they actually really like the food. It's sort of like if you ever go to a movie and you're late, it's really dark in the theater, you can't see to find your seat. But if you stand still after a while, your eyes adjust. And the same thing happens with your taste buds. So that's what I would call what you're saying. I call it neurological adaptation, but taste buds rehab, taste bud retraining. It's a thing, because I didn't like the food me eating steamed kale for breakfast, and not when you're coming from Coke Slurpees. So yeah, but I forgot to say, if you want free recipes, just sign up at chefaj.com. I think we send you 5 of my favorite ones.
Chef AJ, may I ask, somebody has a question? So what is it that do you, now that you are on a whole food plant-based diet for many years, once in a while do you feel like eating something that is processed?
Not really.
And do you fight it?
I don't have to fight it anymore. Also, I love everything I eat so much. And I work so hard I was obese for over 50 years and I've only been slender now for 10. And I really like the way being slender looks and feels more than I like the taste of the crap that I was eating. Now, if I was in an environment where there was a lot of crap, luckily I don't go to restaurants. Another great thing about the pandemic, but even before that, I shied away from them. If I'm exposed to hyperpalatable food and everybody else is eating it, of course I'm going to get tempted. So I don't put myself in that situation. But the food I eat now is so good, it's not a struggle anymore. So am I tempted? Not too much, unless I'm in an environment where I see that food. So I just protect my environment. So I don't go to bars, I don't go to restaurants, I don't let any crap food in my house. People can't bring it in, they know that. So no, but I could see how it's a problem for normal people that socialize in the normal way with the normal food. But that's just like an alcoholic shouldn't go to a bar, I don't go to a restaurant. Or even when I go to Costco, I don't walk down the bakery aisle, because I used to love, oh my God, I love their bakery there. It's exposure. I don't let myself do that. But I make food so good. And plus, because I was a chef and of all things, a pastry chef, I find ways to make all that stuff like lemon meringue pie and carrot cake out of whole food. So really, there's no deprivation, because if there was, I wouldn't be able to do it this long if I felt deprived every day.
Okay, so as a person who is approaching a whole food plant-based diet for the first time, as you mentioned earlier, that probably cheese is something, or dairy is something that you would like them to remove from their diet first, as the first thing. But once they have probably reduced or eliminated dairy and other animal products, and processed foods. How does a person who's following a whole food plant-based diet, how does that person's entire day more or less look like? What does he eat for breakfast, or what should he eat for lunch? Like just a rough idea.
I think the short answer is food. So I never liked this idea, and I don't know what it's like in other, well, you know what it's like in other countries, but in the United States, breakfast is generally caffeine and sugar or flour. 67% of Americans eat boxed cereal. I think in other countries, they eat food for breakfast, like whatever it is. It could be beans and rice. It could be, it's like more savory. Actually, most of the world eats savory breakfast, which I think is a much better idea. But I don't think you have to have like specific food because it's specific time of day. I also don't think you have to eat breakfast unless you're hungry. That's like a eat when you're hungry, not by the clock, not by what the meal should be. Eat food. For a typical American on a plant-based diet, though, usually it looks like for them oatmeal and fruit for breakfast. I eat vegetables for breakfast. I eat like vegetables like broccoli and sweet potatoes. I eat savory breakfast. That works better for me. But I think just eat food. Like Michael Pollan said, eat food, mostly plants, not too much. That really is all you need to do.
Wonderful. We have a question from Doug. What about eating vegan organic versus eating vegetables grown with pesticides, herbicides, and chemical fertilizers that kill the soil and create water pollution?
So I always tell people, whatever the question, like what should I buy in terms of kitchenware or food, you buy the best that you can afford. Oops, sorry about that. You always buy the best that you can afford. And the thing is realistically, not everybody necessarily can afford 100% organic or regenerative. Even with organic, they use stuff. I mean, it's better, but they're still using stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm going to say what Dr. Michael Greger says on his website, nutritionfacts.org. It's always better to eat a conventional plant than an organic processed food item or animal product. A lot of times farmers markets are the best bet. These small farms can't necessarily afford the organic certification, but they're as healthy and as organic as you can get. So what I tell people is to go to ewg.org, the environmentalworkinggroup.org, and the produces that have the highest pesticide use or the thinnest skins, that you want to use your money to buy those organic. But things like watermelon, where you're not really eating the rind, or avocado, those are probably less important to buy organic. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is to eat plants, organic, if you can afford them.
And what do you think what is your opinion about the new trends? There's always a trend which is there online, or you meet people like nowadays it is about intermittent fasting, and then keto. What is your opinion about that?
Keto is mortgaging your health in the long term for some quick results in the short term. It's completely unsustainable for the planet. And it seems like a real disgusting way to eat, just to eat a bunch of fat. I mean, fat is what makes people fat, by the way. I really would encourage people to look at the work of Dr. John McDougall, who wrote The Starch Solution and who's been saying for 40 years, the fat you eat is the fat you wear. The thing is, I don't know very many people that can sustain a keto diet because it's disgusting. I mean, how do you even go to the bathroom without fiber? And yes, people get short-term goals met with diabetes and weight loss, but you can easily do that and exceed that with a plant-based diet that is more varied and delicious. I don't know people that can really stay on keto very long. So that's what was it? Oh, intermittent fasting. I don't know enough about it yet to recommend it for everyone. I think people that have suffered with discordant eating, like bulimia, anorexia, a lot of dieting history, I think to add another log to that fire is not always necessary. But again, my idea, it's not my idea, but the idea of eating when hungry, not by the clock, will lead more people to a more intermittent fasting like schedule. If people are really honest, most people I know aren't starving when they wake up, unless they're really like addicts, and then they have to feed that addiction. If people really were honest about hunger and not worried, well, this is when my break is, if I don't eat now, what if I get hungry? So if you get hungry, you eat later, people will naturally go to a more intermittent fasting thing. But the thing is it doesn't have to be, a strict intermittent fasting thing. I think if people would just stop eating after dinner, which is the worst time to eat, no matter what, you can finish dinner at 7 o'clock and just don't eat until 7 o'clock in the morning. That's intermittent fasting. That's probably going to be enough for most people. Some people do a 16-8, but I think if you just don't eat after dinner, you're intermittent fasting.
I just want to say that you just reminded me of something. Traditionally, in India, like you're talking about like 100 years back, traditionally we're supposed to finish our food before sunset. And then we are supposed to stop eating and then go to bed, morning wake up, and then, do your prayers, clean up your house, and then go for your breakfast, which actually ends up being 15 to 16 hours.
See,
Traditionally we are supposed to, that's how we were. But now, of course, we, as I said, that we want to emulate the West so much.
Yeah, because
that
the cereal industry made people feel like they had to eat breakfast, and they did some research that was completely fake. What they did, and I think you can find this on Dr. Jennifer Morano's site, is that what they did is they compared children who ate cereal for breakfast to children who were so poor they didn't eat even dinner the night before, and said, see, children who eat breakfast do better in school. Breakfast is a construct. Breakfast just means break fast. It doesn't have to be at 5, 6, 7 in the morning. It can be at 11. I generally don't eat lunch till 12 or 1 o'clock. I'm just not hungry until then. I exercise in the morning, things like that. So if people are eating addictively, they're not going to be able to intermittent fast. So when you eat a diet that doesn't always make you have this toxic hunger, you can delay eating until, a little bit later. But people that are still in the pleasure trap, that are eating a lot of sugar, fat, and salt, they'll get shaky if they don't eat right away when they wake up.
Okay, we have a question from Andrea. Sometimes when people go vegan, they may hit a weight loss plateau.
Mhm.
What are your recommendations to get through that plateau?
More vegetables. Vegetables are the food lowest in caloric density, highest in nutrient density. They're 100 calories a pound. My mentor, Dr. Alan Goldhammer, used to always say, show me an overweight person and I'll show you someone unwilling to eat enough raw salad and steamed vegetables. Increase the amount of vegetables on your plate. Make sure every plate of food you eat, half of it is non-starchy vegetables, and then half of it would be starch, like your potatoes, rice, beans, or squash. More vegetables. That's the
okay. We have Philip coming, who says sweet potatoes for breakfast is intriguing. Tell us more about breakfast. More about that. Breakfast for me is what's at hand, not pre-planned.
Yeah. Well, realize that breakfast, I'm using it as the word break fast. I don't eat till 12 or 1. So for most people, that would be lunch, but beans and greens can be breakfast. I mean, any food can be breakfast. It's only in this country that breakfast has this idea of pancakes, waffles, bacon and eggs. Anything whatever you had for dinner last night, that can be breakfast,
Mm-hmm. All right. Lee Fong from Singapore. She says, I just finished reading your book, The Secret to Ultimate Weight Loss, and today is my 3rd day of having vegetables for breakfast.
Oh, thank you. That's exciting.
I'm still hungry after eating a whole plate of cabbage.
Of course you are. It's only 100 calories. So eat some starch right after that. Then eat your oatmeal and fruit, or then eat your sweet potato or your rice and beans. Maybe I didn't make it clear enough in the book. You can't just eat 100 calories for breakfast and not be hungry. You're going to be hungry. Some people get hungry immediately, some in 1 or 2 hours. So then eat some starch. And eat it with vegetables too, though. But that's a good habit to start. Vegetables from other cultures, other countries eat vegetables as part of their breakfast. Not just vegetables, but vegetables to start. And then you need more starch. You need more calories. You'll be very hungry if all you eat is vegetables and fruit. It's too low in caloric density.
Okay, so we actually are at 9:50 right now. We will probably just close it in with a couple of more questions. I had a question. Okay. Mamata asks, what is your recommendation for diet for people with hormonal disorder or autoimmune disorder? Can I just say something, Mamata and Chef? I have an autoimmune disease. I have Hashimoto's hypothyroidism.
Me too.
Oh, right? You do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I had hypothyroidism, and when I went whole food plant-based, I reversed my hypothyroidism. I'm not on medication for the past many years. I've had a pregnancy after I became vegan, so there was no issue with hormonal. There was no hormonal issue even over there. So yeah, so now I'm just going to pass the question to you, Chef. What is your recommendation for people with hormonal disorders? Or
I just typed it in the chat. I hope you can see it. is to have a consultation with a plant-based doctor. And I wrote a website, Plant-Based Telehealth. They can do consultations in all
Wow.
50 states in the United States, plus Washington, D.C., plus anywhere in the world. Dr. Lori Marvis founded it, and there's wonderful doctors like Dr. Clapper. But I haven't, like you, I have Hashimoto's and I eat this diet too. But I think somebody with medical concerns should be medically managed.
Mhm. Somebody says, I just bought your, Amy says, I just bought your book. Thank you. Looking forward to reading it.
Thank you very much, Amy. I hope you enjoy it.
So is there any other question? Because we were supposed to have Chef AJ for 30 minutes and we are like over 50 minutes
I'm
already.
hungry. I'm hungry, you guys. I got my.
And it's time for me to have my breakfast.
See what happens.
Is there any other question anybody wants to ask? Andrea?
No, oh, I think Leo would like to ask a question.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I wanted to tell you that I bought Driscoll strawberries. Okay. And on the inside of the label, it said, if you like our strawberries, you can write to us at this email address, or you can call us. So I thought, wow, I've never done that before. So I called them. And I said, a woman answered the phone and I said, well, I saw your little message. So I decided to call you and tell you how much I liked your fruit. And she said, oh, she was very surprised to hear from me. And I said, where do you get your strawberries? Because, you know, we all have kind of a winter, even California does. And she was in California. And she said, well, we get them all from Mexico. I said, okay. I said, do you use pesticides after you plant them here in America? And she said, well, we don't use pesticides in the soil for the organics. But she said, we do use pesticides for the ones that are not organic. And she said to me, I said to her, well, then they do have the pesticides in them because obviously they're systemic. And she said, well, we put the pesticides deep into the soil. And I got off that call and I thought, this is absolutely crazy because it's going to affect all of us anyway. You know, it just is. It's in the soil.
Yep. It's not ideal, the situation, but you know, I feel like if you eat as healthy as possible, you can protect yourself from a lot of the consequences of some of these things. Not a perfect world.
I think I know, Chef, that you have another engagement coming up soon. You did mention that in the email. I think we will just end our wonderful conversation here, and we have Chef AJ's website to go to check out the delicious recipes that she creates, and I have also reposted the plant-based telehealth.com, the consultation that people can do for their health issues, and I think that's going to be very, very helpful.
And literally, I broadcast every single day on YouTube for 11 to 12, and if you watch it on YouTube, there's a chat. You can ask me questions there, because I just saw a question from Anju. What are your thoughts on plant-based proteins? You don't need to take them because plants have all the protein you need. You don't need to be supplementing with protein powders and things like that. Plants have all the protein you need. Nobody asked the elephant where it's getting its protein. Plants. You don't need extra protein.
Look at the size of the elephant.
Yeah. And, you know, think about it. When we need the most protein is probably when we're infants, because we're growing. Breast milk is like 80% protein. So this obsession with protein is killing us. Therefore, a good book to read would be Proteinaholic. You know, broccoli has more protein per calorie than steak. 100 calories of broccoli has 11.2 grams of protein. 100 calories of steak has 5.4. So eat plants, eat enough calories, you'll get enough protein. I promise.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lei Fong says that your book is amazing, and thank you so much.
I appreciate that. What?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Somebody's asking a question.
Chef, what do you think of fruits with worms? Is it all right to eat the fruits with worms?
I don't know what that is. Fruit street worm?
There are a lot of fruits, there are worms inside, and when you eat, you don't see the worms. Is it harmful?
Worms.
Or does it add the protein to it?
I wouldn't eat worms personally, not intentionally.
But I'm telling you, what happened is when I went to Majugore, the cherries were very, very beautiful. And every cherry has worms in it. And everybody, when they break the cherry, they see the worms, they throw away. I said, no, just put in a mouth and just eat it. Is it going to kill you or does it have proteins to it?
I don't have an answer to that. I'm sorry. But I do have an answer to the juicing for weight loss. No good, because you're removing the most important component, which is the fiber and the pulp. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chef
Thank you so
AJ.
much.
Thank you guys so
Chef
much
AJ.
for taking
Thank
it.
you so much.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Eat plants.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining this interview.
you.
I
Thank you,
hope this has
everyone.
helped you.
Thank you.
Thank you, PDG Philip.
you.
Today at 8:30, there is a cooking demonstration that I will be conducting, where I will be making recipes with chickpea, just to address the protein question, which keeps cropping up all the time. So 8:30 Singapore time in the evening, I'm going to be having a cooking demonstration. I'm cooking 3 dishes. So if you're free, then please join in, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep. And after
good.
that, if you're in the Western Hemisphere at 2 p.m. Eastern time, we have another wonderful cooking demonstration. We'd love to see you. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Amber.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Turn off your recording, Anne-Marie.